Okay, good morning. We are still in the halachis, Shulchan Aruch, discussing the laws of personal safety. Rabbi showed me a source which was very valuable to our discussion we had, I think, on Friday, about bran, right? We singled out bran as something that's not good to have in the house. It invites negative spiritual energy. And there was a note here that said, right, that the bran has to be spilled all over the place, and that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
What was that source? Was that out there of himself or one of the footnotes? What was it? Where was the bran? And remember?
Okay.
In halacha, middle of halacha, halacha 9. Where is it? In halacha 10. Subin, where was it? Where did we see it? No? Any rate, he showed me a source which said that the issue with bran is because at the time it was a cheap food. And consuming a cheap food was a way of like disregarding or being unappreciative of God's blessings. You can afford better food and you're getting cheap food because you think you're saving money. Don't be like that. That was the source he got, but I wanted to see where it said. Oh, here, yeah, middle of halacha 9.
Which footnote?
I don't see it in the footnote anywhere actually. Maybe 15, maybe 59.
Section 11b.
Drinking water.
Oh, 60.
60. What does it say in 60?
HALACHIC, you were there. 116, 199.
Oh, Kafachayim says that it's only when it's spread out when it's spilled out. When we asked, well, why would it be different than any other bread that's spilled out, which is no good? Right. So there's another source which says the issue of bread nothing to do with spread out, but because you're demonstrating that you're not appreciative of the blessing because you're buying cheaper food.
Didn't they say the same thing about barley? That it's like for like dog feed? Or
Yeah,
horses?
but the Gemara doesn't hear anything say anything about having dog feed, having barley as a as like an invitation to poverty.
I guess because
bran, yes.
throw barley on the floor, it's more edible than bran. They don't treat bran with respect.
No, again, the source of Gimple saying is nothing to do with spilling out, even if it's in a bowl. That's the whole point.
Right, because it's mistreated most likely.
Nothing to do with mistreating. The very owning of bran as opposed to wheat is itself mistreating your blessings.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
Right, that makes it distinct from the source. The Kafachayim says that the problem with bran is that it's a mess. Why would that be different than anything else? So a different source that has nothing to do with spreading the bran out on the floor. Just the very owning of bran indicates that you're not appreciative of your blessing because you can buy better food. Okay. Now that makes it distinct from okay. From crumbs in general. Okay, halacha 13. Shalom the ear. If the city you're living in is in a peaceful state, then al yahalech adam b'tzidi adrachim. You should not be walking around in the alleyways, side streets. Because if the city is in a peaceful state, then the angel of death isn't wantonly killing people. And therefore, where does the angel of death hang out? He hides himself in alleyways. So you don't want to be bumping into him. So stay away from the alleyways. Okay. Dever beer, if there's an epidemic in the city. Yeah. This is the source for staying home during COVID. You shouldn't even walk down the regular road if there's an epidemic in the city. Because the angel of death is hanging out brazenly in the middle of the streets. Because he's been granted permission to exercise his duties, considering there's an epidemic. So don't hang out even in the middle of the street.
Business is booming. It's
for
a good day.
It just happened. I just pressed on a button and it popped somewhere.
So we came across before.
Sorry?
So we came across before with the Mavet. So when
yes.
He comes back from the funeral.
That's right. Where he's hanging out. He's on duty, so he's prone to action.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously here it's talking about on a spiritual level, but nonetheless, it's still if we're gonna go along with our thinking that the spiritual realm was mapped on top of the physical, Then when there's an epidemic, it travels from one person to the next person literally, like physically, via germs or whatever. And spiritually too, the angel of death is hanging around. So be careful. So a person should try to flee the city at the beginning of an epidemic. Epidemic is coming, leave. Right? Today, epidemics are international because people travel. But in the old day, epidemics were usually isolated to 1, 2, 3 cities, towns. And they would actually go on lockdown when these things
Well, same way.
Well, yeah. How else do you stop it from spreading, right? They would go on lockdown, but if you're in a small city with 200 houses, you can control it. You go on lockdown for whatever it is, 2, 3 weeks. You sustain whatever casualties you sustained, and then try to get back to normal life. When you have an international movement, it's very difficult to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in the old day, that was not unusual. In fact, in bigger cities, for example, for not polio, but for
typhus.
Yeah, if for typhus, in bigger cities, certainly, if a person got typhus, God forbid, they would put them in a home outside the city so that they don't spread it. Basically, leave the person there. Either he'll die or recover.
Is that
Abandon the person outside the city so he doesn't spread around. People could. Yeah, there are stories of Hasidim who were stuck in these places and how they dealt with it. There was a famous Hasid. What was his name? He was in the Rebbe city, Kartunislav. One was a Sheikhet, Menachem Goldschmidt, and the other was Nikolai, Rebbe's grandfather, actually. Rebbe's grandfather. Yeah, it was Rebbe's grandfather. And he had contracted typhus, and was put outside the city. And every day, his friend, the Sheikhet, would come to sit outside of the building by his window and read out loud a certain chapter of Tanya discussing faith. And that sustained. That kept him going, kept him fighting, and he survived. Anyway, the point is that this idea of epidemics and sickness spreading from one person to the other, spiritually speaking, our sages were plugged into that fact.
Right.
They knew it on its spiritual truth, which of course plays out in the physical realm as well. Okay, so if their person sees a epidemic coming to the city, he should flee. If he didn't flee the city at the beginning of the epidemic, don't leave at the end. Now, my assumption for this is, if we're going to give not a spiritual explanation, but a physical one, is leaving the city at the end of an epidemic is likely that you carry the germ and you're just going to bring it to the next town. If you leave at the beginning, it's likely you didn't get it yet, so run away. But if you're leaving at the end, so it's likely that it's in you somewhere, so don't run away, you're just going to bring it somewhere else. So rather, you should hide yourself, seclude yourself. Don't hang out in the market, in the public places, because the negative spiritual energy is about there killing. Or the germs are out there killing. Or the germs are stacked atop of the negative spiritual energy is stacked atop the germs. And Kosov, as the verse reads, no one should leave their house until the morning. It's a verse. Right? Verse footnote 77. Footnote 77. Shmois 12:22. The verse warned the Jews against leaving their homes on the night of the plague of the slaying of the firstborn. Because the angel of death is doing his mission, and if you're hanging out in the streets, God forbid. So hide out. Here is the halachic source for quarantine. Okay, halacha 14. Now, the last 3 halachas move from the laws of personal safety and now goes to property safety. In the same way, one is not allowed to cause damage, harm to themselves. One is not allowed to cause damage to their property. Yeah, and otherwise known as Baal Tashchis. The prohibition against Tashchis means literally destroying. The prohibition against destroying or wasting resources. Halacha 14. Are you with me?
So it's not referring to your own.
Any. Let's see.
Oh wow.
Well, destroying someone else's property is just outright stealing and damaging it, pay for it.
Public.
But even your own,
Right.
or even hefker, we'll see.
Right.
Halacha Yadalit. Kashem shitzarich lizar begufei shel loy la'abdoi. In the same way, a person is obligated to take care of his body, not to destroy it. Loy la'kalkalei, not to break it or destroy it. Loy la'hazika, not to cause it any damage or harm. Right? That's what we were talking about the last 5 classes, about making sure one's safe, making sure one's home is safe, one's eating safely, one's traveling safely, and so on and so forth. These are all halacha. Likewise, one is obligated. Kach tzarich lizar b'moedoi. A person is also obligated to take care of his property. Shleila abdoi, not to destroy it. Leila kalkalei, not to ruin it. Leila zika, not to damage it, not to cause it harm. And therefore, chol v'shaber kelim, anyone who breaks vessels, oy kirei begodim, or rips garments, oy heides binyan, or destroys a building, oy sois mayan, or closes up a well, and ma'abed machalos, or destroys food, oy mashkin, or drink, or makes the food or drink so disgusting that it's not edible, oy zodik mois liibud, or just throws his money away. It's forbidden. Likewise, someone who destroys anything which people are capable of enjoying. This is an interesting qualifier, which means I'm allowed to tear a piece of grass, but I can't break the table.
Right.
Follow?
Okay. Which one is that, sir?
There's a qualifier for what is prohibited to destroy, the kinds of things which people can enjoy, which means I can rip a piece of grass, but I can't break this table. Right? Following?
Yeah, with more to do with public and private property.
No, not necessarily.
It's not my table. Grass is.
Even if it's your table, you're not allowed to.
Right.
He's talking about his own property here. Again, if I'm breaking somebody else's property, then I've violated stealing. I have to go pay him back. But even my own property, right? The same way the person said, we said before, a person's not allowed to say, my body, my choice.
Right.
It's not your body, not your choice.
Right.
It's Hashem's body, and he decides, we're just not allowed to break it. You got to take care of it.
Right.
So no such thing as my property, my choice. I'm going to break the table.
Right.
No. You don't destroy property. It's about tashchis. Someone's not allowed to waste.
That's the abortion movement in a nutshell.
I was trying to make a subtle reference.
Sorry.
Kidding. Not so subtle. Doing so is a violation of a negative prohibition. Shenemar, as the verse reads, es etza. This verse is associated with Chamisha Asa B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, which we just celebrated last week. How's that? Because the verse reads as follows. The verse says, when you are attacking an enemy and you are laying siege to the enemy, so you're surrounding the enemy, right? And to stop food from going in and out because you want to, it's a war tactic. You want to drive them out. So says the pasuk, Lo yisashchis es etza. Don't cut down the trees that are around the city. And the verse says, V'chya adam etza sada. Is a man a tree of the field?
Yeah.
What did the tree do to you? Right. So the verse actually is putting a question mark, telling you, if it's a human, he's attacking you, okay, you can cut him down. Because he's your enemy and he's coming to attack you. But the tree, what did the tree do wrong? Don't destroy the tree. That's the Torah's description there. That's why it's connected to Tu B'Shvat. Because Tu B'Shvat, everybody brains and talks about how the man is compared to a tree. The verse actually puts it as a question mark. Is a man a tree of the field? Did the tree do anything wrong to you? Don't cut it down. So since we made fun of my body, my choice, here we have a support for the tree huggers. I'm a little facetious, but
tongue in cheek.
In honor of this morning's shir by Milsa de Chusa, about jokes. But yes, you can't just destroy a tree. What kind of thing is this? That didn't do anything wrong to you. No, destroy it.
Point making. Even during wartime,
Otazoi.
you have to be concerned about property. If it's not necessary to the war effort,
Exactly.
Then don't cut it down because
Otazoi.
that's how important property is. That even
Exactly.
war,
Exactly what he says in the parentheses. If Torah is warning you against destroying property of non-Jews, whom you are fighting, is your enemy. Your enemy's property. How much more so? Yisrael, that one should treat property belonging to a Jew, yourself included, with respect. Or even if it's public property, it belongs to no one, not public property. It's hefker, it's ownerless. Still, it's Hashem's world. You don't destroy it. I think I've mentioned this before. My mother used to tell us all the time, it's Hashem's food and you don't treat it that way. It was in her house and she cooked it. That's what she used to tell us. It's Hashem's food. You don't treat it that way. Kids, you take bread, you dip it into the soup and you dip it into the water, make messes. And it's Hashem's food. You don't destroy it like that. It's halacha here. You're not a mama'is oichad. You cannot make the food disgusting to eat. Which, by the way, we learned this also, I think, once. That the halacha is, after you wash your hands, you have to dry it very well. For this reason, because you're not allowed to cause food to become, that's right, you're not allowed to cause food to become inedible. And making bread soggy is turning it into, it's waste.
Right, exactly.
It's waste. My great grandmother was very, very particular about not wasting food. This is probably more of a Holocaust war trauma thing than it was a question of the halacha, but nonetheless, she was very, very, very careful. My grandmother took his mother, who passed away when I was 8, 9, older. And so I remember her very well. So she had an endless stream of apple pies coming out of her house. Why? Because she'd go to the market and she'd see all the bruised apples. And she could not stand the thought that tonight the workers in the store are going to come collect all the bruised apples and throw them out. She couldn't handle it. So she would buy all the bruised apples. What do you do with bruised apples? You can't eat bruised apples. But you can make them into apple pie. And nobody, a bruised apple and apple pie, no one knows the difference. It tastes the same delicious. So she used to literally buy the bruised apples and make apple pie. She called it epoli pie with her Hungarian accent, which I can still taste it. I know what it tastes. Remember what it tastes like. Yeah. So, but she took this to the extreme. She used to do the paper towels that are very big.
Yeah.
So if you have a little bit of something spilled, what do? You take the whole thing because that's where the perforated rip is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you end up wasting a whole big piece of paper towel because you need to dry up a little tiny 2 droplets of water.
Right.
So she used to tear the paper towel in half.
Right.
When they came out with the half-size perforated ones, and the family's like, "Oh, this is unused style, saving."
She was the inspiration for that.
Maybe.
Right.
Anyway, the point is she took this very seriously, not to waste property. It was ingrained in us as children. Now, interesting halacha, the next halacha there. Ba'afilu kavanasa, even if his intention is, he wants to show anger and wrath. Lahatal emal b'nei beisai, in order to impose order on his family, misbehaving. So he wants to demonstrate that he's angry. As it says in the footnotes there, if the person's actually angry, God forbid, don't do anything. I'm not saying that someone should do this. But the halacha Rambam writes is that a person may hit his child for disciplinary purposes. Today, this is out off the charts. Don't do it. Don't hit any children. Period. Made that caveat. Having said that, where once upon a time it was a thing people did as part of education. So says the Rambam, this is hundreds of years ago. He said, you can hit your child if it's going to yield disciplinary results, but only if you're not angry.
Right. Wow.
If you're angry, because now what does your child hear? If you yell at your kid out of anger, your kid does not hear a word you said. You know what your kid hears? Tati's angry. That's all the kid hears. Everything else, not listening.
Yeah.
But if you're not angry and you're measured in making a strong point and you're speaking sternly, okay, now it's effective because you're not coming from anger. It's a question of the rules. And he says here, so even if you're destroying property, to demonstrate that, you want to show how you want to I don't know, this is, again, I don't do this today, but maybe this is once upon a time method. You broke something to demonstrate to your kids that I'm really angry, that they should behave. Even that says Alter Rebbe forbidden.
It's funny you said that because my father,
Sorry?
it doesn't go back to hundreds of years. It was in my time. My father used to beat me all the time.
Oy vey, yeah. This is true. Probably after your time too. I'm just saying that Rambam spoke hundreds of years ago. Yeah.
He had a bad temper and he used to hit me all the time.
Oy.
With his belts and everything else.
We're happy you're here, Alan, learning with us. I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's true. I never remember it being like in a calm and reflected state.
Yeah,
It was always out of anger.
which is when it's not effective because you don't hear what you're saying. You don't even hear what you're saying. Just all I hear is anger.
I missed the point.
The point he's saying is that even if you're destroying for the purpose,
To demonstrate a disciplinary action,
even that's forbidden.
even it's forbidden both when he's angry or when he's not angry.
Correct. Even when he's
But
not, even when he's not
where-
angry, it's forbidden.
But not the one where he gets, God forbid, the child.
In that case,
If he's not angry, it's
then the Rambam says if it's not, again, don't do it today. But if it's not,
God forbid.
because the main point is the
You don't
result.
understand the hypothetical.
Yes, the main point is the result, which actually the footnote 86 points out an interesting thing that the halacha is. If you remember this, we learned it's in the Mishnah, it's the Mishnayos, that I'm not sure if we learned it. Anyway, it's the Mishnayos that if the Levites who were on the guard duty at night would fall asleep,
Yes.
they would get their
But
clothing
but the
burned,
leader would-
burn their clothing
Yeah, burn the
to wake them up.
Right.
He's violation of the halacha. He's destroying property, which indicates if the destruction of property is going to yield results,
Oh.
then it's permitted.
So like the trees.
Like the trees, look, we'll see in a second. If it's going to yield results, then it's permitted. Which obviously, with your children, if it's coming from anger, it's definitely not going to yield results. And if you're not angry, then obviously you're level-headed and you can actually think about, is it going to yield results or not?
Right.
And 98% of the time, it will not.
Right.
And that's point the halach here, I think. Don't break that plate to make a point because it's not going to be effective. You're just destroying property.
Yeah.
What do you want to say?
Same idea.
Yeah.
It's a means to an end that yields a benefit.
As we'll see right now, in halach 15. Let's see if we can finish this today. Well, 15 and 16. The medvar mamorim. When is this true that it's forbidden to break property? If he's doing it in a manner that's just destructive and just ruining, that's all he's doing it. There's no other purpose other than destruction. But if the reason why he is breaking is because it's going to bring a correction, then it is permissible to destroy. If the only way to fix the problem is by breaking this item. For example, Elon Michael shemachish esakarka, a tree that bears fruit, so it has benefit for humans. Right? If the tree has no benefit for humans, you're allowed to break it anyway. But here's a fruit tree, so it has benefit for humans, but this fruit tree is ruining the property. The roots are going into your foundation or whatever. And now it's destroying other trees that are better than it. So you have an orchard, and one tree is destroying the rest of the property. So then the only way to save the rest of the property is by breaking down this tree. Then it's permissible. Right? Follow that?
I missed it. No. What did
You have
say?
a tree
Yeah.
that produces fruit. So
Right.
it's forbidden to break it down because it has benefit for humans.
Right.
But that tree is destroying every other tree.
How?
Whatever, it's sick. There are trees
Okay.
that are sick or has roots are growing and it's causing whatever the reason is.
Okay.
It's bad for the ground. It's bad for the soil. It's ruining the other trees. So
Okay.
then you're allowed to break it down because now the destruction is for the sake of correction.
Right.
Likewise, you need the space to build a home. You're allowed to clear a forest so you can build a house. Or your tree is blocking the sunlight from coming into your home, which you want.
The swimming pool.
Well, you need a swimming pool. It's permissible to cut that tree down. Or if the tree is actually more valuable if you sold its wood to build something than if you were to sell its apples.
Wow.
Then again, you're allowed to break it down. The same thing is true with destroying any other articles. If the purpose is a positive net result, then even if the action is destruction, you're allowed to.
But that's usually the case, though. No.
It's
Wood is more expensive than fruit.
People have apple orchards and they're not cutting it down to sell it for wood, right?
No. Well, because they have gam lagam. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So you have one tree in your backyard and
Right.
you need a few bucks. You can sell the apples, you can sell the trees. Okay, so you're allowed to cut down the apple.
Make it big, man.
Yep. The Ein Tzarech Loimar, certainly, needless to say, in the Kalkaloi al Manas Atakan Gufay, if he's breaking something down in order to protect his body, then certainly it's permitted. What would be such a case? Going Shasoidev Kisei, he breaks a chair down and breaks it, a shulchan or a table. Leischamen bahem, in order to get warm. He has no other wood available. Fuel. I had a friend who told me his grandfather after the war was very, very wealthy, had tons of cash. But in those days, post-war, the cash he had from Czechoslovakia or whatever it was basically worthless.
Hmm.
And it's in the winter, he's freezing. He literally burned cash to keep himself alive.
Hmm.
He would have kept it. He probably would have been a millionaire a couple of days later. Not to worry, he died a millionaire anyway. But but he had all he can freeze to death with a lot of cash
Right.
or live. Okay, so similarly, a person's out in Russia where the Alter Rebbe is living, and it's winter time, he has no wood. So he's allowed to break the chair down and burn it so he can stay alive. Or another scenario, it's for a mitzvah. So a person shechts an animal, right? Halacha is the blood that comes out of that initial slaughtering wants to cover the blood. It's a mitzvah, right?
Yeah.
If you ever went to Kaparis, you've done a mitzvah.
Yeah.
Kisadam. So he has no earth to cover the blood. It's winter, there's permafrost, the earth is frozen, he can't pick up any dirt to cover so he's got to make some ashes. So he takes a cloth, burns it, makes some ashes, and uses that to cover because he wants to eat the chicken. That's permissible. And mainly offer acher if he has no other earth available, like for example, if he's in a boat. The same thing is true of any other scenario where the destruction brings a benefit. Last halacha. Call Elon Srak, a tree that is literally barren. It doesn't produce any fruit. Right? So it doesn't have any human benefit element. It's permissible to cut it down. Afilu ein neitzarech loy klal. Even if he has no need for the wood. He's doing it for the fun.
Yeah, and then he says to cut down any shade tree.
Yeah, because it's all produces is shade, meaning it doesn't produce any fruit. You can cut it down just for the fun, because again, has no benefit for humans. The chein ilan machal
That
and
seems interesting. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the halacha mentioned before. That's how it's similar to ripping grass. Oh,
Seems to conflict.
so the wartime case, the halacha is you're allowed to cut down all the trees that produce fruit. But if they're just
So that was talking about fruit.
if they're not fruit trees, you can cut it down. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at footnote 94. This is important. This word whatsoever, klal, footnote 94, you see it?
Yeah.
This word klal, whatsoever, where it says you can cut it even if you have no need whatsoever. You're allowed to cut down this tree that produces no fruit.
Tree that doesn't bear fruit.
Yeah, or whatever, a spruce tree. A spruce tree, cut it down just for the fun. You're going as an activity, you're going felling, wood felling. So whatsoever is the Alter Rebbe's addition to the wording of Rambam Hilchos Malachim 6:9. Right, that word klal. You have no benefit whatsoever. Yes, you're following?
Yeah.
That word whatsoever is added by the Alter Rebbe. The apparent implication is that there is no problem, even if one derives no benefit whatsoever from cutting down the tree, so long as the tree doesn't bear fruit. Yes?
Okay.
Note, however, look at the Deburim in English translation, volume 1, page 179, 180, and look at the Sechus, volume 38, page 135, which speaks negatively about tearing a leaf off the branch of a tree. Certainly, those texts would not condone the wanton destruction of an entire tree, even though it might be permissibly halachically speaking. See also Psachim 132, which states that even cutting down a shade tree for no purpose is not a sign of a blessing, even if it may technically be permitted. Right? Actually, this look what the Deburim is referring to is a story of the sixth Lubavitcher. You follow that?
Yeah.
You follow that? Yeah.
Yeah.
The sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, walking with his father, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he was tearing up a leaf as they were walking and talking. And the Rebbe Rashab, his father, reprimanded him, saying every leaf is by divine providence placed by Hashem in that specific place, and you're wantonly ripping it up. That's when the Alter Rebbe told him that a leaf falls down from a tree. It's valuable because, for all you know, there's a worm that needs a shade, and the tree fell down to give the word, right?
Right.
So even though the halacha is you're allowed to break these things, as Alter Rebbe saying it, nonetheless, appreciate this is God's world by divine providence. Leave it alone.
There was also a word from the Baal Shem Tov, sorry, that said, not a blade of grass.
This is where it comes from.
Oh, wow.
The Rebbe Rashab is telling his son what the Baal Shem Tov said.
Hmm.
This is the story in response to his son ripping up a leaf. If I remember correctly.
This also could be related to the idea that where someone is not liable for punishment in the court
Strict
system,
halachic says-
in the court system, but they may have punishment by the hands of heaven.
Yeah. So I can't say.
In a-
Yeah, I can't. It's similar. In other words, just because halacha says you're allowed to doesn't mean you can or you have to. Right?
Right.
There's a Hayom Yom which says not everything that's das is betarnish, tarmanish. That which you're not allowed, it's forbidden. And dasas b'meg, that which you're allowed, darf manish, don't need.
It's almost like what we're learning in Tanya about the food.
What does that? Just because you can doesn't mean you need.
it, but not to be.
Gluttonous.
What happens if you have a bunch of palm trees in front of your house that provide shade? And
Is
you're
it
afraid of the
forbidden then to cut
demons,
it down?
and you're afraid of the demons. Can you cut it down?
Oh. So then you'd be allowed to anyway because it has no fruit.
No
But
fruit.
maybe it's the
no.
date palms,
Just be
maybe.
careful when you're cutting it that you don't get in the way
Yeah.
of a really long.
I know, good question. Okay, let's continue. Likewise, a fruit tree, which has benefit for humans, and in shehiskin, the tree's gotten old, it's aging. And it's barely producing any fruit, and it's not even worth your effort to go collect those fruit.
The apple tree that all the fruits are not so.
It's not even worth your effort to go get those fruit trees. So now it's reverted from its original status of being a fruit tree to being a regular barren shade tree. It's permitted to cut it down. The same thing is true of any other property that's being destroyed, where the property is of no use to humanity. The Elon Zayas, a olive tree, which produces a quarter of a kav worth of olives, meaning enough olives to produce a quarter kav of oil. I believe that's the correct measure. Where's 96? What does it say?
It's like 46 ounces.
Right, it's
46
oil.
ounces.
Yeah. So then the dekel and a palm tree for you, Alan. Ha'oisa kav tamarim, which produces a full kav of dates. Also, it's forbidden to cut those down because that's considered producing something of value. The gam in general, there is a danger for your demons, Alan, in cutting down a fruit tree. Only in such a way that is mentioned above, where it's useless, and then you're allowed to cut it down until such time it actually is a danger. Footnote 98. Where is that? In that vein, Baba Kama quotes Rabbi Chanina saying that his son died at a young age because it cut down a fruit tree before its time as a punishment. So, Alan, there's your answer. If it produces date palms up to a kav or a kav and more, no cutting it down. Okay, so this concludes a very fascinating and unusual, unique chapter of halachas in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. And if we break it down, I think the whole chapter is saying basically one thing. It's not your life, it's not your body, it's not your property. It's all a gift from Hashem. And as such, it is your obligation, duty, and privilege to treat it with respect. All of it, your body, your life, and your property, to treat it with the respect it deserves, given to by its creator. Quoting my mother again, it's Hashem's food, and you don't treat it that way. Okay, Yidden, have a wonderful day, buddy. Alan, we're going to see you today at Mincha.